Cases of coronavirus in the U.S. now top 200. Concerns growing about that cruise ship holding off the coast of San Francisco. Thousands told to stay in their rooms as the Coast Guard flies in test kits after that former passenger died from the virus. Cases grow coast to coast, doubling in New York, and out west, parts of Seattle now shut down as major companies order workers to stay home. Dr. Jen Ashton and her medical team back answering your questions this morning.
The Bernie Biden battle, two top contenders fighting it out for Elizabeth Warren's endorsement, what she's now saying about her failed campaign.
Double trouble. The storm that brought flash flooding to the south now about to combine with another system and head towards the East Coast. Ginger tracking the latest.
Facing the judge. The mother of those missing Idaho siblings set to appear in court as the FBI puts out a new call for help. Why they're focusing on Yellowstone.
Bill Clinton bombshell. President Clinton opening up like never before about his affair with Monica Lewinsky.
Nobody thinks I'm taking a risk. That's not why people do stupid things. That's not what happened.
Why he did it and how he told Hillary and Chelsea, and his new message for Monica.
And the final royal tour. Harry and Meghan back in the UK making their first public appearance together since announcing their royal exit.
It's very nice to be back.
Their message this morning as they prepare to reunite with the Queen.
Live in Times Square, this is Good Morning America.
And Good Morning America, we want to get right to the latest on the coronavirus emergency. Thousands of passengers on that cruise ship are stuck at sea off the coast of California right now, confined to their rooms as they wait for test results.
We're going to be talking to one of those passengers coming up. And right here in New York, thousands of people are self-quarantining at home after they may have come in contact with the coronavirus. A 12th fatality has now been reported here in the United States, the latest in Washington state. And at this hour, the number of cases topping 200.
Congress has now passed an $8 billion emergency coronavirus funding bill to help battle the spread, sending that bill straight to the president's desk.
We have team coverage starting with Whit Johnson here in New York, where cases have doubled. Good morning, Whit.
George, good morning to you. New York's governor is opening an emergency operations center as several thousand people have been told to self-quarantine. Most of those linked to one single patient at this hospital behind me. Across the country, health officials are rapidly trying to ramp up their testing and contain the spread. Coronavirus test kits flown in by helicopter to that idling cruise ship off the coast of San Francisco. This morning, more than 2,400 passengers on the Grand Princess cruise now ordered to stay in their rooms until they can be evacuated. A 71-year-old man who sailed on the Grand Princess last month died of COVID-19, the state's first death linked to the illness. At least 20 people on board reportedly showing symptoms. A nurse from Northern California now under quarantine after treating an infected patient, issuing this anonymous statement through a union representative, criticizing the way the CDC has handled the outbreak.
The national CDC would not initiate the test.
Seattle has seen the virus spread to at least 70 patients. Take a look at the city's iconic Pike Place Market, normally bustling with tourists and shoppers. On Thursday, virtually deserted.
It's like a ghost town.
Some of the Emerald City's biggest employers ordering workers to stay home. Overnight, Microsoft and LinkedIn confirming one worker from each company testing positive for the virus. Amazon and Facebook already closing their offices until at least Monday amid the outbreak. In nearby Kirkland, the Life Care nursing home has seen at least 8 of its residents die. Families are outraged at the lack of response and communication from the CDC, the facility, and local authorities. Colleen Mallory spoke with our Kaylee Hartung about her mother, Peggy, who shares a room with one of the patients who died from the virus.
Have you asked them to test her?
Yes.
And what do they say?
She's not showing symptoms. She doesn't have a fever. She's not coughing. So, yeah.
Even though she had a roommate?
Even though she had a roommate that was sick.
And now another major American city seeing the virus spread within its borders. Harris County, Texas, home to Houston, confirming 3 cases overnight. In New York, the number of cases doubling to 22. At least 18 linked to that Westchester County lawyer who is still hospitalized. The other patients have had no known contact with the infected individual. More than 2,700 people in the state are currently self-quarantined. Meanwhile, growing fear and outrage in New Hampshire, where an employee at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center returned from a trip to Italy symptomatic. He had been told to self-isolate but broke the quarantine attending a party. Now both he and another person linked to him have been confirmed as New Hampshire's first 2 cases.
Here in New York, the mayor is telling anybody who traveled to any of those 5 hardest hit countries to immediately self-quarantine for 2 weeks. The health commissioner is also ordering a number of city employees to be tested for the virus if they show any sign of symptoms at all. Cecilia?
Okay, Whit, thank you very much. And joining us now is Debbie Loftus, who is on that Grand Princess cruise ship docked off the coast of San Francisco right now. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you were traveling with your parents who are in their 80s, who were in a room right there next to you. How did you all find out what was going on the ship?
Well, about 2 days ago, we've had a piece of paper slid underneath our door telling us that the CDC determined that there's some people on the boat that were symptomatic and that we were having to head back to San Francisco and miss our stop in Mexico.
So we can see you in your room there now. It's our understanding that you're now confined to that room, but passengers were allowed to mingle even after it had been discovered that there were previous passengers who tested positive. Is that concerning to you?
It wasn't concerning because we all figured we've been together and mingling for the last 13 days. So if we were exposed to it, it would have happened already.
What are the conditions like for you right now? Are you getting food, being able to see your parents?
We're next door, and there's a little door between our balconies that is open. And so I've been able to see them and play some cards with them.
Well, good. We're glad you can keep an eye on them. I want to ask, Did you have any concerns about getting on a cruise in the first place, given everything that's going on with the coronavirus right now and what has happened to previous cruise ships in recent weeks?
We did have some concerns, and especially because my parents are elderly and my mom has asthma. So we talked it over, and we just figured that that there was a small chance, but it was worth taking.
Do you feel like you're getting the information you need from the crew and the cruise line at this point? You have what you need?
The captain is coming on every 2 or 3 hours to keep us updated as to what's going on and what the CDC is telling him and what's being required of us.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much. I wish you well. I wish your parents well, and same for all the other passengers there on board with you right now.
Well, thank you, and let's just pray everything comes back negative. We should know about 9 o'clock this morning Pacific time.
Be well. Well, they're still in good spirits. I guess they figure if you've been exposed, what can you do but follow the guidelines and hope for the best.
Self-quarantine. And so many people affected. Around the globe, thousands of new cases of coronavirus were reported overnight. The number now topping 98,000 worldwide. James Longman is in London, where the virus has now turned deadly. Good morning, James.
Yeah, that's right, Amy. Good morning. Here in the UK, we've now had our first death from coronavirus. The Prime Minister's office saying it's likely it will spread in a significant way. And it seems that the wave that started in China is now cresting here in Europe. Italy's cases keep jumping, and now the Vatican has its first case. A medical clinic there has now been shut down for sterilization. And take a look. This gives you a sense of how quiet major tourist spots around the world are. Rome, Spanish Steps, as they normally are, and now, and a similar picture in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Take a look at what it usually looks like, and now that it's been restricted. This is the holiest site in Islam. Millions of people are being affected by this, but there is a glimmer of hope in Asia. The World Health Organization has said the spread there appears to be declining, so you've got to hope that a decline follows now for the rest of the world. But they do warn that this virus is still very much a threat for all nations. George.
James Longman, thanks. And the consequences of the coronavirus are also cascading across the global economy. Wall Street bracing for another wild day after the Dow plunged nearly 1,000 points on Thursday. Rebecca Jarvis is tracking it all from the New York Stock Exchange. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, George. That's right. And just as American families are asking this question, how might we deal with the coronavirus and the outbreak? Wall Street is asking that very question. How will the consumer respond? As consumers, we make up 70% of the economy. Our spending matters. And businesses have already cut back dramatically, from Boeing to Ford to Amazon, all telling their employees not to travel. We've seen it reflected dramatically in airline stocks across the board. United, American, JetBlue. JetBlue, all getting crushed. They've been waiving those change fees, allowing people to cancel, but that hasn't helped as far as the stocks are concerned. And for the cruise companies, those stocks have been cut in half. And when we look at this virus and the impact it might have on the economy here, we can look to China and what's already happened there. U.S. companies with a presence there, for example, Starbucks, which does about 10% of its business in China. They say that in this quarter, they, George, have seen sales dip 50% because of all the stores they've had to shutter as a result of this virus. George.
What a huge drop. And you mentioned the companies banning travel for their employees. You're also seeing more and more companies telling their workers to work from home.
This is a giant experiment. We heard it from Whit earlier in the program. A number of companies in Seattle have told their employees to stay home. Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, among the companies. And George, I have heard from a number of business executives who are contemplating the same measures for their companies. That could apply to millions of employees here in the U.S., George.
More to come. Rebecca Jarvis, thanks very much. Amy?
All right, George, well, as thousands of people self-quarantine here in New York and those passengers are told to stay in their rooms on the Grand Princess, a lot of questions about how well these quarantines will work. Let's bring in our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Jen Ashton, to answer some of those questions. We heard about those passengers. We heard from them who are stuck on that cruise ship. We know the last time people self-quarantined in a cruise ship, it did not end well. It was fairly disastrous. So why is this still the best course of action?
So obviously, as most people can imagine, on a cruise ship, you have a lot of people in very close quarters. In general, we think that the closer and longer the contact, the greater the risk of spread or transmission. And to decide whether or not to keep people on a cruise ship like that, it's risk versus benefit. It's what are the risks of keeping them on and what are the risks of letting them off? What are the benefits of keeping them on and what are the benefits if they're let off? Very difficult risk-benefit analysis.
About the greater good, basically.
Exactly.
We heard from James Longman that, and this is some good news potentially, that in China now, which is where it all began, the rate of spread has declined. What does that mean for the rest of us?
Well, in some ways, I think it could be an example because China took extremely aggressive measures. Obviously, they were not able to completely wall off the outbreak from spreading to other countries, but be clear, the reason we're seeing numbers allegedly drop right now in China is because of the interventions that they took. So again, there may be some lesson in that for the rest of the world.
All right, and in the meantime, more than 2,000 people right here in New York are self-quarantining. Is that going to be the new normal, and for how long?
It may be, Amy, and I'm going to tell you why. We might be changing phases now from trying to contain or stop or prevent this outbreak from coming here to mitigate or slowing its spread. So we talk about things like non-drug interventions, things like school closings, canceling large gatherings, telework or teleschooling if possible. These measures not only protect the individual, but they potentially protect the most vulnerable, which is the elderly and older population.
All right, Dr. Jen, we appreciate it so much. And you can send in your questions for Dr. Jen on Twitter and Instagram all morning with the hashtag AskGMA. She's going to answer some of them live in our next half hour. George?
Looking forward to having you back when we return now to the race for the White House. Now a two-man race on the Democratic side after Elizabeth Warren dropped out in the wake of her shutout on Super Tuesday. Both Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders hoping to get her endorsement. Mary Bruce is in Washington with the latest. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, George. Well, Senator Elizabeth Warren billed herself as a progressive candidate with a plan for everything. But now that she's dropped out of this race, the big question this morning, what's her plan for what comes next? This morning, Elizabeth Warren's endorsement is up for grabs.
Well, let's take a deep breath and spend a little time on that. We don't have to decide that this minute.
Overnight, Bernie Sanders courted Warren's supporters.
Tonight, we invite Senator Warren's supporters into our campaign.
Progressives are hoping she'll back Sanders. He needs a boost after Joe Biden's Super Tuesday surge. But Warren is making it clear it's not that simple.
I was told at the beginning of this whole undertaking that there are two lanes. A progressive lane that Bernie Sanders is the incumbent for and a moderate lane that Joe Biden is the incumbent for. And there's no room for anyone else in this. I thought that wasn't right, but evidently I was wrong.
Sanders and Biden have both spoken with Warren. In a tweet, Biden calling her one of the fiercest of fighters for middle-class families, adding we needed her voice in this race. Not lost on Warren or her supporters, this is now a two-man race. Warren now reflecting on all those pinky promises she made to little girls across the country.
I'm running for president because that's what girls do. All those little girls we're going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
Now, Warren was asked about the role that gender played in this campaign, and she gave a blunt response. She called it a trap question for every woman who must decide whether to address sexism and risk being labeled a whiner or simply deny it altogether. Cecilia.
Yeah, she said she has a lot more to say on that one. Okay, Mary, thank you. And we're going to turn now to a blistering new criticism of Attorney General William Barr and his handling of the Mueller report. A federal judge calling Barr's public statements, quote, misleading and distorted. Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas has more on this. And Pierre, the judge is now demanding to see the censored portions of the report, basically saying Barr cannot be trusted.
Cecilia, good morning. That's right. Judge Reggie Walton, who was appointed by President George W. Bush, issued those scathing comments as he oversees a lawsuit asking for the full release of the Mueller report. He challenges Barr's very integrity and questions whether, quote, Barr made a calculated attempt to influence public discourse about the Mueller report in favor of President Trump. Walton goes on to say that he has, quote, grave concerns about Barr's actions and that the Attorney General Barr's lack of candor specifically calls into question Attorney General Barr's credibility. Barr has flatly denied claims he was misleading about the Mueller report, which he says he quickly and largely released. Sources close to Barr telling me this morning the judge is wrong on the facts and that his comments about Barr's intentions are inappropriate. Amy?
All right, Pierre, thanks for the latest. We now turn to the latest on those missing Idaho siblings. The mother set to face a judge today as the FBI puts out a new call for help, focusing on a trip the family took to Yellowstone last September. Diane Macedo has the story.
This morning, the FBI is asking for the public's help after releasing new photos of Lori Vallow's missing children, 7-year-old JJ and 17-year-old Tylee. They say this September 8th trip to Yellowstone National Park is the last time Tylee was seen. Now the Bureau's asking for any other photos from the park that day that might show Lori, her brother Alex, the kids, or their car. Vallow, seen here arriving at the airport in Idaho on Thursday, was just extradited from Hawaii to face charges for felony child desertion and misdemeanors like contempt of court.
Let the record reflect that Ms. Daybell is now in the courtroom.
On Wednesday, the 46-year-old appeared in a Hawaii court, invoking her Fifth Amendment right, standing silent with arms folded.
She is invoking her Fifth Amendment rights to remain silent, should not be questioned without an attorney present.
Vallow had been living in this Kauai condo with her new husband, Chad Daybell, after allegedly abandoning their Idaho home in November when police came looking for Lori's children.
And Lori's attorney has said she plans to defend herself against these charges. As for the kids, neither has been seen since September. But this weekend, Lori's husband, Chad, told ABC News, quote, the kids are safe. Has not elaborated since. No, and we'll see if we hear anything new in court today. All right. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Okay, we are following a lot of other stories this morning, including the latest on Harry and Meghan's final royal tour. They are back in the UK, preparing to reunite with the Queen.
Also coming up, the safe way to commute during the coronavirus emergency, how to reduce your risk on planes and trains. Plus, Dr. Ashton and her medical team are back answering your questions. But first, let's head over to Ginger.
And I want you to check out these images from Charleston, South Carolina. Yes, they flood, but they did have a considerable amount of rain with the low that moved up a half a foot close to the Georgia state line. Now that has all moved off into the ocean, but it's still going to impact some folks. Wind alerts stretching from Alabama and Georgia up to Massachusetts this morning. That low that's out there could bring 4 to 6 inches to the Cape of snow, and you could also see gusts up to 65 miles per hour. Your local weather in 30 seconds. First, how about we get the weekend getaways, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
Hi, can you tell me how to get to I-70, please? Oh, okay, are you... yes. Thank you.
Switch to Progressive and you can save hundreds. You know, like the sign says.
Get ready for showers anytime today, and with increasing winds, it's going to feel chilly, if not cold. Temperatures today will top out at about 50 to 51 degrees during the afternoon. Passing showers, those will continue. Could even have a snow shower coming our way late today and maybe real early this morning. So tomorrow, your high 49, and then 62 on Sunday with sunshine. So Sunday, definitely the better day. A new weather maker next week on Tuesday after we top out at 70 degrees on Monday with a later sunrise.
My body is truly powerful.
I have the power to lower my blood sugar and A1C.
Because I can still make my own insulin. And Trulicity activates my body to